Hello, my friends. Welcome back. We're finally there. We've done our intro. We've talked about equipment. We're finally going to bake our very first loaf of whole grain bread, freshly milled, right here. For the love of all that is holy, we are finally there. Okay, so I already posted the recipe on Wednesday, but for those of you who did not get it, of course, it will be posted again below the video in the description. So this is a very simple place to start, and I wanted to do this so that we can all kind of agree that this is as simple as it gets, and then we start to layer on more technique, a few more variables. Like remember algebra and we swore we'd never use it again? We're kind of sort of going to use it, but without the math. We're going to use the good part without the math. So this particular bread is going to be this particular bread is going to be the hard white Sonora, which is soft. Now, why did I do this? When you're making a blend, you want to figure out what the end result is that you're looking for. And for our soft sandwich bread dough, because we're making two different things with the same dough, we want something that's going to be rich, tender, flavorful, but we really want that softness. And because, you know, especially when you're first trying to convince your family that whole grain isn't the worst thing in the world and they're not being punished and we're not sending them to the gulag against their will, we have to make it so that it smells great. The house is going to smell great. It's going to be beautiful. And let's see if we can even sneak it past them and just say, taste this, it's amazing, and see what they say. So we're going to do a very soft sandwich loaf, and with that same dough, we're going to cut it in half, and we're going to turn the other half into a rich, buttery cinnamon swirl, because it's very, very easy. It's going to make the house smell amazing. And when the house smells that good, I don't think anybody's first thought's going to be, Mom or Dad is trying to sneak us whole grain bread. So let's go from there. So we've got our whole grain white, hard white. We've got our Sonora, which is soft. And we are blending in, to start with, bread flour. Why? Why aren't we just staying with just the whole grains? When you're trying to transition and you go from that super soft stuff that everyone is used to and you immediately just go slam right into 100% whole grain, the change is so stark that it tends to get people to shut down. Especially when you've got family and you've got children, they will, in my experience and the experience of anybody I've tried to loop into this with me, it's always been the same. If we ease into it, you find that you'll like it better, the children like it better, and then we start to move our ratio. So we start off with an equal amount of whole grain and bread flour, and then over time, you can decide if you want to push it and have less bread flour, more whole grain. You like it this way, then you begin to be able to play with that ratio. But this is a great place to start to make sure that you are not run out of your house on a rail on a Sunday and then everybody's mad at me. I don't want anybody mad at me. I love you guys. So we're going to start here. We've got our whole grains. We've got our bread flour. This is a very high quality bread flour. I use King Arthur most of the time. I am particular about bread flour. I do not like, I've tested, I actually had nothing better to do, and I really wanted to test if there's a difference, because if you're paying $6 a bag, or you could go get like the Walmart brand and pay, you know, like $2.99, well, wait a minute, is there a difference? Am I paying for a label? I hate that. You know, when you've got the purse and it's got the labels all over it so everybody knows, I'm not that girl. I know it's a nice bag. I like my bag. Even if it's the crappiest bag in the world, I like my bag. And I don't care what other people think. So I was feeling the same way about, am I overpaying for this? So I tested it. And I used the same recipe, and I used the good brand, well, in what is in my opinion, the good brand, King Arthur. I used Pillsbury, and I used the store brand. In that particular case, it was Walmart. There was a difference. There was a noticeable difference in the way it handled hydration, meaning how it absorbed its liquid, the texture, and strangely enough, it smelled funny. And I don't know why it smelled funny. I never figured it out. I actually bought a second bag because I thought maybe something was wrong with that bag. It didn't smell weird in the bag. It smelled weird in the final bake. And none of us could figure out why, but we ended up giving that loaf to the birds. So that is what it is. So for that reason, I can tell you without knowing why, and I hate that I don't know why, if it's possible and it's affordable to your budget, please, this is a spot where if you can pay a little better for the good flour, I recommend you do. There are lots of places where I say we can cut corners. For example, we're using butter in this bread. This isn't the place where you have to use the really expensive, high quality European style butter that costs the same for half a pound as the traditional American butter costs for 1 pound. This regular old sticks of butter is just fine here. So this isn't the place for the good stuff. Let's swap out here. Let's just use the regular butter for that, Land O'Lakes, whatever, and it's fine. Honey, an egg, we've got our salt, instant yeast. I do not use any other kind of yeast. I just tend to use instant. If you want to swap out and use active dry yeast, you just have to take a little bit of the liquid and a little bit of your honey, mix it up and put your yeast in there and bloom your yeast. That's the only difference. It adds 10 minutes to your life. No big deal. It does not change the rest of the recipe. No worries. I just always buy my instant yeast and I buy it in a big bag, and I go through a lot of them. So if you don't bake as much as I do, please just use the packets. It's fine. Okay, did I say everything? I did. Now we're going to grind for the first time, so we're going to meet over at the mill. So I'll see you in a minute. Over at the mill with the crazy color. I already explained why it has that color. I hate that color. I hate the color. I always turn the mill on before you add the wheat berries. Is going to be something called autolyse. And what we're going to do is we're going to, into our mixing bowl, we're going to add our bread flour, the flour we just milled, and our liquid. In this case, it's milk. We're going to let that mix together, and we're going to let it rest with nothing else in it for 20 to 25 minutes. And this particular mixer comes with a lid, so we're just going to close the lid on there, and that allows our flour to hydrate. Skipping the autolyse when you're working with freshly milled grains is a mistake. It's not the end of the world when you're dealing with just, white flours, but when you're dealing with whole grain flours, the autolyse is very important. Please don't skip it. That's our freshly milled flour, our bread flour. Make sure we get it all. Now again, everything we're doing is done by weight. Everything is measured in grams. I did give you the volume measurements, but if I can beg upon you, please try and switch over to grams. It will make all the difference in the world, and you will enjoy baking much, much more. And we're just going to add our nice warm milk. Take this off so you can see. Now all I did was turn it on long enough to make sure that there are no dry pockets, and we're going to put the lid on and we're going to let this rest for 25 minutes and we'll be right back. While we're waiting for our dough to autolyse, we've got our egg, salt, yeast, butter, and honey waiting on deck. So the next step is we're going to build the dough. See you in 25. So our time is up, 25 minutes, and if you look, you can see we've already, because we let it autolyse and the moisture, in this case, the liquid that we added was milk, has already started to develop a little bit of gluten. When we left, this was just a shaggy mess, and now look how we're able to pull. You get that little bit of development in the gluten just from the rest. Now we're going to build our dough. So here we add our yeast, our egg, and we all know how I hate chasing whole eggs around, so I beat the egg. Honey. Now remember, all of the details are in the printable that is linked below the video. So this is 75 grams of honey, otherwise known as 3 tablespoons. This is raw honey because it's what I have. It's all I ever buy. And I very rarely need to buy honey, though I did have to buy it because I'm out of the homegrown stuff at the moment. And I have a really cool thing that I have to share with you guys at a later time. but I'm very excited about it having to do with bees. But we'll come back to that. We've got our salt. Now remember, I just put all my yeast right here, so I'm just going to stick my salt around the edges. And I like to break up the butter. It's room temperature, nice and soft, but it is not melted. That makes a difference. Don't use melted butter. Okay, I got it on my fingers, and we all know how I feel about that. And we're going to put the lid back on. Ordinarily, I would just close the whole thing. We're going to keep this going until a dough forms, which means this big sloppy mess is no longer a big sloppy mess. And then we're going to let it actually knead so that we're developing our dough. And we're going to let it knead for about 8 minutes. Now, we're not going to worry as much about the time as we are with the result. So I'm going to show you what we're looking for, and it's more important than the time, because depending on which type of mixer you have, the time could be very, very different. So I give you the time just to give you an estimate so that you're not thinking it could be 2 minutes or it could be 2 years. But that is an extremely rough estimate because it's not really relevant. It's really about the texture of the dough, and that is what I want you to focus on. So when this turns into an actual dough and it doesn't look like a hot mess, we'll be right back. So now you see what we have here. It's still quite wet. This has freshly milled grain in it. That means that over time, the dough is going to be a little more thirsty. Please don't add any extra flour. Let this dough mature, let it develop its texture, and we'll worry about it then. We usually do not need any more. So we're going to let this go now for about 8 to 10 minutes. What we're looking for is an elastic dough. It's just a little bit tacky, it's smooth, and it will pass the window pane test. That is the key, and I will show you how to do that so you know exactly what you're looking for. We won't have any guessing, no worries. So I'm going to set a timer for 8 minutes, and I'm going to start checking then. What you also want to make sure you don't do is over knead. When you're working with a machine, especially a really powerful machine, it is possible to over knead. It is virtually impossible to over knead by hand. I mean, unless you're, I don't know, a bodybuilder, and I mean, if Arnold Schwarzenegger in his heyday were kneading the dough, maybe he could do it. I, under no circumstances, could over knead this dough. Not even on my best day. It's kind of sad now, think about it. So my timer just went off at 8 minutes, and what we're looking for is supple, tacky, and can pass the window pane test. So now I'm touching the dough and I'm grabbing it, and there's nothing sticking to my hands. Okay, so it is a little bit tacky. You see, if you can hear that, but there's nothing sticking to me, so we're not showing too much liquid, so we don't need to adjust our hydration at all. It is very supple, it's beautiful, look at this. And then now the window pane. Now when you're gonna do a window pane test, I'm gonna try to do it from both sides here over the front of this camera. You pick up dough and you stretch it, and you want to be able to see light. And what we have here is a window pane pass. See the light? That's all you need to do. That tells us that the gluten network has developed enough for us to move on to the next step. Good boy. Okay, so now we're on to the next stage, which is our bulk ferment. Now, you may have heard me say many times that we're doing stretch and folds in some of our previous bread videos during our bulk ferment. In this case, we are not. We want to leave our bread nice and tender. We are not looking to develop so much gluten like we would be if we were doing stretch and folds. So we're going to do a very simple bulk ferment. So I sprayed a little bit of oil into our bowl. And I'm going to hold back just a little bit of dough. I always keep a little bit of dough for our refrigerator so that we add this to the next. So this is going to be the one I use for whole wheat. So I have one in the fridge that is our old dough that we've been doing the entire time. I've been doing it for years, actually. So I'm starting one separately for our whole grain. So we have 2 of them. So I'll get a container for that. So if you're joining me in adding old dough that develops flavor, all it does is the next time we make a whole grain dough, we add that to it. We knead the bread just the same as always. And before we go into our bulk ferment, we pinch off that little bit, put it back in the container, and you do that every time. And over time, that little tiny bit of dough creates the most beautiful flavor. And it just becomes this little extra something that is, you'd miss it if it weren't there. But if you're not doing it, if it's just not something you want to worry about, no big deal, no harm done. So I'm just going to give a little bit of a shape to our dough. I never just leave a rough mass just blobbed in the bottom of the bowl. Just like that. I'm going to cover this. I'm going to put it in the proofer, and we're going to let this go for 60 to 90 minutes. We'll know it's ready to go when it's just about done. We get our outfit on, our little onesie, off to the proofer. If this is the first time you're seeing me do this, this is our little old dough friend. Just make a little ball, drop it in here, and we always want to make sure it's in a container that seals really well, and this just goes in the fridge. Comes back out the next time we're making a freshly milled loaf of bread, and we just add it to our dough, and we just continue to do that. Then we grab another piece, put it back in, and we do this for the rest of our lives. It's a commitment. And now we're just getting the filling for our cinnamon swirl ready while our dough is rising. Even though this is for a sweet filling, you want to make sure you add a pinch of salt. It will taste flat without it. I promise it will not read as salt. So here we are. We've doubled in size, and she's beautiful. I think I just changed the gender of the dough. Yeah, I'm a dork. What do you want from me? Okay, so now we're going to put a little bench flour down, and we're going to divide our dough in half. If you are being extra careful, you would weigh the dough and divide that number in half and get exact measurements. I am going to eyeball it. The dough smells so good. And that's one of the things you'll notice when you're working with freshly milled grains is that it just smells really quite delicious. Even though it's raw, it smells so yummy. So what I'm doing is I'm evening this out so that when I go to cut it, I have the best chance of getting pretty close to perfect. And I check myself and go. Okay, so one of these is going to be rolled out and formed into our sandwich loaf, and the other is going to be our cinnamon swirl. So I'm just going to take half, push it off to the side. Okay, so now we check to see our size. We are just about right. And we're going to roll it up with our thumbs. We just drop it down, and that just helps it seal. Bring it towards ourselves. And seal. Perfect. Now we take it and it right in. Perfect. So now we're going to put this little outfit on, and we're going to work on our cinnamon swirl. So I'll set this aside. And I had already started playing with this one. Now we're going to roll this out. You can hear the air escaping. Now, you may be wondering, why so long? Well, I'm going to show you. Now, in the instructions, I show you just the simple basic roll it up, swirl. But I figured everybody already knows how to do that because we've already done it. So I'd show you this one. Okay. And we've got our nice soft butter. And we're just going to spread the butter evenly. Now this butter, of course, is going to be what holds our cinnamon sugar in place. This is called an offset spatula, and it allows you to spread without getting your knuckles all in whatever you're spreading. Okay? This is brown sugar, cinnamon, and a pinch of salt. Cover it nice and even. No bald spots. And it's nice, just use the back of the spoon to make sure we're spread evenly. Okay. Okay, now you can roll either from the long side and go this way, that'll give you a big fat one, or you do it this way from the long side, which is what I'm going to do because I'm going to twist it. It's just a little more interesting when you slice it. You know, instead of just that simple spiral, which is what we've all come to expect, it's just a little more fun, and I like to close in the side so my sugar doesn't just run all over the floor. Do it on this side too. And bring it back towards yourself and roll. Because if you don't bring it back towards yourself and roll, the filling will slide out the front. And then we're going to pinch our little snake closed. Okay. Put it down on the seam side down. Let me make sure I'm still in here. For the most part, let's back out a little bit more. Okay. Now we're going to come in the shape of a U. Okay, just making sure I'm still in there. And then we twist, pinch it closed, and then this side we roll one more time. And that gives you this. And it's much cuter than just the simple little swirl. Fits just like that. Really simple, but it gives you a little bit more of an impressive look. You know, a little extra flavor, no charge kind of look. Okay, so we're going to cover this up. We're going to get another little outfit because I used the other one. And we're going to put it in our proofing box. And here we are, just about an inch over the edge, which means we are ready to go into the oven. 350 degrees. It'll be just over half an hour, but what's important is the temperature. We're going to use our instant read thermometer and take the temperature, and we want to be between 192 and 205 degrees. And we take the temperature, 201. little melted butter. Because we set the paper up this way, pops out just like that. And we don't burn ourselves. Don't leave the paper on, because if you do, it'll create condensation underneath, and the bottom of your bread will get very soft from the steam that will build up. So make sure you remove the paper. If only you could smell how glorious it smells in here. Now, you know, the thing is, how many times have you seen freshly milled grain and the bread is flat as a pancake? Or it looks like a squat little creature. Not this one. Okay, and here we are. We're going to take a temperature, just like I showed you, right in the center. Perfect. We're at 197 degrees and still climbing. So we can stop right there. Now, this is important. This bread is full of hot molten sugar. So we are not going to use our what is this? Our sling. We're not going to use the sling to pick this up right now, because this bread has to cool in the pan. That's why it's so important that there's paper here, because without the paper, the sugar would cool and stick the bread to the pan. There is not enough greasing of a pan in the world that would let this out if you didn't have some paper in it. So we're going to just brush on our melted butter. That helps because this is, again, these are freshly milled grains, so they do behave a little differently. So this, by adding this butter on at the end, it helps make sure that we remain with a tender crust, that it doesn't get very, very dry. So we set ourselves up for success. And I have never experienced a time when melted butter was a bad idea. Go all the way around. And this has to cool. Now, this will take quite a while to cool. It is twisted and there's molten sugar through the whole thing. This will probably take the better part of an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. This one will probably be cool to the touch in about 45 minutes. I recommend you don't cut these at all until they are absolutely cool. The final cooling down is a very important stage in the baking process. The driving off of the steam is essentially the end of the bake. The baking isn't finished in the oven. It's finished during the cooling process. It allows the proteins and the structure to set. If you cut into it while it's hot, you end up with a very gummy result because the steam has been driven off too quickly. Allowing it to do it this way, at its natural pace, guarantees that you will have the best structure possible. Okay? So we're going to let this cool, and I'm going to go run around. I don't know why I'm going to run around, but I guess I'm going to. And I'm so glad you were here for this. I'm going to cut this when it cools. But in the meantime, I hope you love this. I hope you try it. This recipe is so easy, and it's a delightful way to start our series on freshly milled grains. Thank you so very much. I'll see you next time. I'll slip in a little bit at the end where you can see the inside. I love you. I'll see you next time.